Superhero stories such as The Dark Knight, Batman The Long Halloween, and Unbreakable are not just basic stories of good versus evil, but a deeper examination of justice and societal failure. These stories are both a critique of individual morality, but also a starting point for exploring systemic inequalities that exist in the real world, including the areas of race, class, and the criminal justice system. Through the characters and their worlds, we can uncover the broad imperfections of our own institutions and the question of how to achieve justice, even in an unjust system. Gotham City exemplifies society's vices in The Dark Knight. Corruption, inequality, and crime are rampant. A wealthy, privileged man, Batman, chooses to restore order himself, but whether his actions are helping is an altogether separate matter. Batman is not really fighting crime, but plugging mechanisms of a flawed societal system where he himself has created. A line from the Harvard Political Review piece that reads, "When you strip away the movie's grandeur, the Batman story is about a rich white man who spends his nights pummeling criminals because the legal system does not satisfy him," is telling. With all of Batman's money and privilege, he's effectively above the law. His apparent willingness to skirt the very system he seems to uphold reveals the moral complexities of justice in a broken society. Gotham's legal system, like our own, is depicted as a deeply flawed system that can't deal with the root causes of crime and that allows marginalized communities to suffer. The same critique parallels problems in the real-world U.S. criminal justice system. Research also shows that Black Americans, especially Black men, are disproportionately incarcerated and subjected to police violence. The ACLU reports that African Americans are imprisoned at over 5 times the rate of white Americans, and that Black men are frequently vulnerable to excessive force or racial profiling. The systemic inequalities present in the fictional setting of Gotham are not so far removed from those faced in the real world, where systemic racism, class-based inequalities are still able to punctuate the lives of marginalized groups and communities. The U.S. criminal justice system, like Gotham, suffers from racial inequalities. As the Sentencing Project states, 1 in 5 Black men in the U.S. will be incarcerated in their lifetimes. This statistic illustrates the ongoing overrepresentation of Black men in prisons. By 2000, Black men accounted for nearly 1/2 of the state prison population, but only about 13% of the United States population. Such disparities reflect an embedding of societal structure so as to disproportionately punish people of color, especially those of African American descent. Racial disparities are evident in both the places where people are held and how long they spend there. According to Pew Charitable Trust, which highlights how racial disparities continue to exist in numerous U.S. jails and prisons, as Black Americans are incarcerated at levels that are orders of magnitude higher than the rates of white Americans. Additionally, the Vera Institute of Justice emphasizes the correlation between socioeconomic status and incarceration, illustrating how living in poverty perpetuates the struggles of marginalized communities. In The Dark Knight, this injustice is seen as Gotham's failing institutions. And so while Batman is celebrated for fighting crime, the system itself is never really fixed. And the root causes of violence, poverty, corruption, and racial inequality are never addressed. Gotham depends on a vigilante hero to accomplish what police and politicians are unwilling or unable to do, exposes a glaring flaw in the justice system. The cycle of power it produces is one that only a privilege can afford to be in.
The Joker in The Dark Knight offers an unsettling critique of failing institutions. In his chaotic quest to upend Gotham's order, he exposes just how fragile their society is, something Batman desperately tries to hold together. The Joker isn't just looking to rob a bank. He wants to shine a light on the deep corruption rotting Gotham's core. He argues that Gotham's elite, Batman included, are just as corrupt as the criminals they claim to fight. In The Dark Knight, he chillingly remarks, "When you bring down the system, you realize it's all just a joke." This speaks to his belief that law, order, and justice are built on shaky, unequal foundations, a sentiment that resonates with real-world critiques of the criminal justice system. Racial disparities persist in many jails and prisons across the United States, with Black Americans facing higher incarceration rates compared to their white counterparts, according to the Pew Charitable Trust. But while the Joker exposes these cracks, he isn't changing anything. He thrives on destruction, offering no real solutions, just chaos. And in the end, his brand of anarchy only highlights the need for deeper change. In Unbreakable, the film critiques how society treats individuals who deviate from physical or social expectations through the experiences of Elijah Price and David Dunn. Elijah, who was born with brittle bone disease, faced years of ridicule and missed out on his childhood, which reflects on how society marginalizes those with disabilities and weaknesses. Elijah has an obsession with proving his worth, trying to prove himself as someone who's different, which arises from a lifetime of being unappreciated and undervalued. For example, when Elijah's condition causes him to be socially isolated, he feels that he must prove his worth to society or force them to see his worth. He believes it is his responsibility to make his significance undeniable, even though destructive means such as the train derailment. On the other hand, David's extraordinary powers set him apart from the societal norms of heroism. David is initially reluctant to accept his role as a hero, illustrating the discomfort many feel when pressured by societal expectations that demand conformity. The lack of recognition for his powers implies that society often fails to validate those who do not fit the traditional schema of what a hero should be. David's journey illustrates the societal pressures to fit in and be normal, even when he possesses qualities that could challenge the status quo. Despite David's heroic abilities, he still faces everyday challenges and vulnerabilities, such as struggling with his marriage, his relationship with his son, and even football, which shines a light on the fact that he's just ordinary. This contrast between his physical abilities and personal life relates to the social justice lens that even those who seem exceptional or powerful are not immune to the struggles of ordinary life. It highlights a common truth in the film that I believe the director tried to enforce. Society tends to overlook the humanity and complexity of those who differ from the norm, focusing only on their most visible traits or abilities that can be seen in the public eye. The film implies a profound need for society to recognize and support diversity while highlighting the persistent barriers marginalized individuals face, such as Elijah. The stories of Batman and Unbreakable, much like the reality of the US criminal justice system, raise difficult questions about justice, power, and inequality. In Gotham, as in real life, marginalized communities, especially Black Americans, suffer disproportionately from a system that favors the privileged. While Batman fights crime, he never fully challenges the social structures that perpetuate the very disparities he seeks to eliminate. Similarly, the criminal justice system is deeply entrenched in racial disparities that remain largely unresolved. Social justice advocates have long argued that the solution isn't simply punishing individual offenders, but reforming the system itself. True justice means addressing the root causes of crime, such as poverty, lack of opportunity, and the generations of systemic racism that continue to oppress many communities. The question moving forward is, how can we have a world where justice isn't merely a punishment of individuals, but rather an effort to break down the systems that are designed to maintain inequity?